There are questions we speak out loud, and there are questions we carry quietly, for years, never daring to ask them unless the night is dark enough, and the world finally falls silent. One of those questions is this: what are we living for? No, what are we doing today? Not what job should I take? Not even who am I supposed to be? But something far deeper, more haunting, more human. Why do I wake up at all? Why keep going? What does any of this mean? If I will one day die, disappear, and be forgotten? You don't need to say it out loud for it to shape your life. Because that question, whether whispered or shouted, it changes you. Today, let's sit with it. Not run from it. Not fix it. Just stay and listen. Existentialism doesn't arrive in lecture halls. It arrives at 2 a.m. when you're lying awake, staring at a cracked ceiling, and quietly wondering why it all feels so hollow. It's not a concept. It's a crisis. It doesn't start with knowledge. It starts with the ache of not knowing, when the routines feel pointless, when success rings hollow, when laughter feels distant. That's when existentialism whispers, softly but unmistakably, "Now you're awake." Sartre called it nausea, that sickening recognition that the world is not what you thought. Kierkegaard called it dread, the dizzying freedom of realizing nothing is stopping you and nothing is guiding you. Camus called it the absurd, the violent collision between your craving for meaning and the silence of the stars. But none of them told us to give up. They said this is where it begins, because when all inherited meanings dissolve, when the old answers no longer hold, you are left with a terrifying, beautiful truth. You are free, and in that freedom, you don't find meaning. You create it, not because life gives it to you, but because you dared to look into the void and build something anyway. Albert Camus gave us a story, but more than that, he gave us a mirror. The story of a man named Sisyphus, condemned by the gods to a cruel fate, to push a massive boulder up a mountain, only to watch it roll back down, again, and again, and again. No ending, no reward, no rest. To most, it's a punishment, a symbol of futility, of struggle without meaning. But Camus saw something else. He saw us, because every morning, we rise, we dress our wounds in silence, we show up to lives that don't always make sense. We do the laundry. We chase uncertain dreams. We carry heartbreaks that never fully heal. We keep going, even when the stone falls, even when no one sees. That one is the absurd, not the labor itself, but the courage to keep laboring in a world that offers no guarantees. The absurd is brushing your teeth, sending the email, saying, "I'm fine," when you're not, and doing it all over again tomorrow. And yet Camus doesn't leave us in despair. He writes something radical, something brave. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, not because he wins, not because the gods change their minds, not because the stone gets lighter, but because he accepts the truth, that the mountain owes him nothing, that the meaning will not come from above, that the absurd will never explain itself. And in that fierce acceptance, he becomes free. He owns his struggle. He reclaims the climb, not for glory, not for escape, but because the act of choosing to push, in spite of it all, is its own quiet revolution. He is no longer a victim. He is the author of his defiance. And maybe so are we. Here's the terrifying, breathtaking, radical beauty of existentialism. There is no script, no divine blueprint waiting in the stars, no voice from above telling you who to be, no invisible hand guiding every step, just you, standing in the open, holding the pen, and realizing the page is blank. And yes, that can feel like drowning, because when nothing is written for you, every choice feels like a risk, every direction feels uncertain, every silence echoes with the question, what if I choose wrong? But what if there is no wrong? What if the absence of meaning isn't a void, but an invitation? What if this is where life truly begins? Not in the answers you inherit, but in the ones you create. Not in being chosen for a path, but in daring to carve one yourself. This freedom, raw, unwelcome, infinite, isn't a burden. It's a gift, a hard-won, soul-shaking gift. Because now, you are no longer just living out a story. You are writing it, line by line, mistake by mistake, moment by messy, miraculous moment. And no one else gets to decide what matters to you. No one else defines what is worthy, beautiful, meaningful, enough. Only you! And that is terrifying, and that is sacred. Living with purpose doesn't mean changing the world. It doesn't require a TED Talk, a legacy, a title carved in stone. You don't have to be extraordinary. You just have to be honest. Honest enough to ask, what makes me feel alive? Not what impresses others, not what looks good on paper, but what makes your heart soften? What brings light into your chest, even on the dullest days? What values would I live by, even if no one ever noticed? What would I be willing to die for? And so, what must I truly live for? Maybe you live for tenderness, for the quiet way your dog greets you in the morning, for the smell of rain on warm pavement, for deep conversations at 1 a.m. with someone who sees you. Maybe you live for creating beauty in a world that often rushes past it. Maybe you live for your children, for your friends, for the hope that something soft can still grow, even in hard soil. Or maybe you live simply for this: the breeze on your face, the sun on your skin, the awareness that this moment exists, and so do you. And that is enough. That is meaning. Because meaning doesn't have to be loud to be true. It doesn't have to last forever to be real. It just has to be yours. Wholly, quietly, unequivocally yours. Living with purpose doesn't mean changing the world. It doesn't require a TED Talk, a legacy, a title carved in stone. You don't have to be extraordinary. You just have to be honest. Honest enough to ask, what makes me feel alive? Not what impresses others, not what looks good on paper, but what makes your heart soften? What brings light into your chest, even on the dullest days? What values would I live by, even if no one ever noticed? What would I be willing to die for? And so, what must I truly live for? Maybe you live for tenderness, for the quiet way your dog greets you in the morning, for the smell of rain on warm pavement, for deep conversations at 1 a.m. with someone who sees you. Maybe you live for creating beauty in a world that often rushes past it. Maybe you live for your children, for your friends, for the hope that something soft can still grow, even in hard soil. Or maybe you live simply for this: the breeze on your face, the sun on your skin, the awareness that this moment exists, and so do you. And that is enough. That is meaning. Because meaning doesn't have to be loud to be true. It doesn't have to last forever to be real. It just has to be yours. Wholly, quietly, unequivocally yours. If you're lost, if you're uncertain, if it feels like you've been walking in circles, with no map, no destination, no clear why, good. It means you're awake. It means the surface level answers aren't enough for you anymore. It means something inside you is still reaching, still wanting life to matter. Because the opposite of meaning isn't sadness. It's numbness. It's drifting through the days without ever asking why. And you're still asking, still aching, still listening for something deeper than comfort or success. That ache, that restlessness, it's not a flaw. It's a compass. It means you haven't given up. It means some part of you still believes that life can be more than survival. So if you're wondering, keep going. If the path feels dark, stay with it. If all you have is a question, that's enough. Because meaning isn't something we find all at once. It's something we grow, slowly, painfully, deliberately, by caring, by choosing, by continuing. And maybe, just maybe, being lost is the most honest place to begin. In a world addicted to answers, in a culture that worships clarity, to live with questions is an act of radical courage. To keep your heart soft in a world that keeps breaking it. To keep loving when everything you love is mortal. To keep creating when everything feels like it's falling apart. To choose hope, not because it's logical, not because it's proven, but because something in you refuses to believe this is all for nothing. To say, even if I never understand what this life means, I will still live it, fully, fiercely, faithfully. That is not weakness. That is not naivety. That is strength. Quiet, tender, unshakable. That is what it means to be human. To stand in the unknown and still choose to dance, to weep and still choose to build, to doubt and still choose to love. That is meaning. Not something handed to you, but something you become. So what are we living for? Maybe not for anything grand, not for a legacy, not for a headline or a finish line. Maybe we live for the quiet things, for moments that don't last, but still mean everything. To feel, truly feel, to weep without shame, to laugh like it saves us, to hold someone's hand in the dark and whisper, I'm here, to turn pain into poetry, to turn ordinary days into sacred ones, to carve love into time, even knowing time will one day let it go. We live, not because we found the reason, but because we still believe this life is worth showing up for. And maybe that's the most powerful thing of all. You, as you are right now, have the power to give this life meaning. even if it's just for one other person, even if it's just for yourself. Music rises gently, warm, tender, open. Thank you for sharing this space with me, and thank you for being brave enough to ask the quiet questions. If something stirred in you today, take a breath. Let it stay. You don't have to answer it now. You just have to keep living into it. Until next time, live on purpose. Even if that purpose is still becoming, even if it changes, even if it's small, because that is enough.